AFA today on AFR Talk from the belly of the news beast, New York City. We're in Lower Manhattan in the shadow of the Freedom Tower. If you're watching on the AFA channel, that's a live shot of Times Square right there. And it's a busy day. It's a beautiful spring. I hope that if you can, you get to get out and enjoy some of it today. But we're talking about not what everybody else is reporting as the big story. General Shinseki has resigned. Everybody wanted him to. That they've been like, that's going to be that doesn't fix anything. That's the problem with Washington. They think, well, if we just get somebody's head to roll, then the pressure will be off. It shouldn't be. What should be examined is what policies and whatever time period it came through, whatever administration, whatever leadership, let the facts lead where they lead. I'm not a partisan. I'm not beholden to anybody. I don't care. But unveil what happened, how it went wrong, and how did veterans die waiting in line when you say you're rolling over $400 million in surplus to the following year's budget for the last 5 years, while putting people on inordinate wait times on waiting lists at VA centers all over the country. I don't care if the guy resigns. Do something of substance to fix the problem. That's what America deserves to see. 888-589-8840. But the story that should be the top story, and this is one of the reasons why you tune in at this time every day, right? Because you know KMC's got your back. You know he's looking out for the stories that you need to be aware of. The Select Committee on Benghazi has gone to work, and they are finding all kinds of holes in the previous investigations. Things that don't add up. Big timelines, completely empty. Where's so-and-so during this time? How come they don't even know if the State Department and the Defense Department ever actually intersected during the actual attack? It's not evidenced in the documents that have been turned in the investigations to date. Pretty crummy. Pretty crummy. Our Navy SEALs, our retired airmen, our ambassador deserved better than that. But maybe you disagree. Let's talk about it. 888-340-3373, 888-340-3373. I'm sorry. 888-589-8840. I do too many phone numbers in my head each day. 888-589-8840. Let's go to Don in Texas. Hi, Don. You're with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're here.
Yes. I wanted to ask you to explain fully your displeasure with the president in dealing with the Benghazi incident and why it's solely his fault.
I never said it was solely his fault. Where did you hear me say that?
From listening to your program, that's what I would gather.
Well, you can gather whatever you want. That's completely different than what somebody says. What is my displeasure with him? Okay, let me start from the beginning. We have Leon Panetta's own words testifying that Al-Qaeda was the source of the attack the night of 9/11 within about 15 to 20 minutes of the start of the attack. We know that he and President Obama met shortly thereafter at the White House. That's all been documented. We don't know where the president then went till 6 o'clock the next morning. I would like to start, Don, with getting an explanation of where the president was. Why wasn't he in the strategy room? Why wasn't he consulted? Why haven't we been given his schedule from the rest of that night? We know at 6 o'clock he appeared, and we know that he got on a plane and went to Vegas the next day for a campaign event. We know that, but we don't know where he was in the midst of the actual tormentous time that was going on in Benghazi over those 11, 12 hours. That's where I would start. Don, did you hang up? Sorry about that. I wasn't intentionally cutting you off. Feel free to call back. Let's go to Lee in Arkansas. Hi, Lee. Welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're here.
What's up, Kevin? How you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Well, two things. For one, my dad's a military veteran, and he got out back in the early 90s. And just last year, they accepted him to get his VA benefits. And my dad was Special Forces in the
Wait,
United
how
States.
long? How long had he been out?
He'd been out since 92, I believe.
And he had not gotten his, and he did not get his benefits for another 20 years?
Yes, sir. My dad actually had a stroke while in some combat training, and he was at Moncrief Medical Hospital, had a heart attack. After he had a heart attack, they discharged him from the military and refused to give him his VA benefits, and he just got it last year. The year before last, I'm sorry.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry, Lee.
Yep, but God's still good. God took care of him. And I do kind of got a little bit of a question.
Okay.
With I called him before and mentioned this. What is your thoughts on the Osama bin Laden? I was on Facebook the other day, and I seen where somebody had posted not believing that he's actually dead. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theory things that goes around, but and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I've heard all the SEALs that were involved in that particular mission have all passed away now, are no longer living. And from what I understand, the only one it is the one that took that final shot. Of course, nobody knows who that is. But I've heard that he's possibly not dead. I mean, in my opinion, President Obama is obviously not Christian. I believe he's Muslim, and I believe he backs Al-Qaeda and their agenda. And this is just my personal opinion, but I believe he's doing all this striving for a third term, because I do believe the Constitution says if we're in an active state of war, the president can't resign his office until after that war is done and over with. And
well, if that was the case, then President Bush could have claimed it and run for a third term, but that didn't happen, and I don't think it's going to happen here. I think that, for one thing, I think the Clintons would have something to say about President Obama trying to get a third term, because I think they're due. I think they believe, hey, we did our time. It's our turn now, which, oh, God help us all if that's the case. But to your other question, Osama bin Laden, look, I didn't see the body. I don't know who the SEALs were. I don't know. I don't have any actual fact different than anybody else has. You know, unlike the president, I truly do see most of this stuff on the TV news reports. I don't have intelligence operations working for me. But if you ask me in my heart of hearts, do I feel like that we got him and he's dead and he's in the ocean and he's not even in his final few years, he really wasn't even that active. A lot of the leadership was already transforming and moving and shifting and going to other areas. The Al-Qaeda in Yemen, much more powerful now than the original Al-Qaeda chapter that bin Laden was associated with anyway. So I don't think he's still around. I think he's gone. I don't know if all the SEALs that were involved in that attack have been killed or are gone. I don't know that that's true, so I can't affirm that question either. But I will, be as interested as anybody if something turns out not to be the case down the road. But my hunch is we got him, and that we did the right thing by getting him. And that's really all I have about bin Laden. 888-589-8840. Let's talk to Susan in Ohio. Hi, Susan. Welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're here.
Hi, Kevin. I had just heard something last night from a friend who's done some research on Benghazi that I questioned. I was wondering if anyone really believes, or if it's been proven, that the Christopher Stevens, the ambassador, was really a CIA agent. And also, she said that it really didn't happen at the embassy itself, but it happened down the road from the embassy at a safe house. Is that all information that you're aware of? Or?
It wasn't an embassy, and I don't think we have an embassy in Benghazi. It was at a place called a consulate, which is not nearly as well fortified as an embassy. It's usually just a smaller shelter. They still try to have some, security around it, but it's not usually. And Christopher Stevens was a lifelong ambassador to the Middle East. His entire career had been spent in the service of the State Department, and for the majority of that time, he had been the ambassador to Libya. So if he was working with the CIA, which I'm sure he was asked to give some information from time to time, I don't think you would have an ambassador in a place like that if he saw something, you wouldn't ask him if he saw it. I mean, I think that's reasonable that he may have known something. It was certainly clear that he was asking the State Department to authorize more security. For whatever reason, they turned him down in the months leading up to it. The Benghazi investigation will try to uncover that and make that more clear as to why. I'm not sure that any of it is total malice on our part. A lot of people put forward an idea that there's a conspiracy that he was supposed to be assassinated or forcibly kidnapped so that then they could trade weapons for his life and all the rest. I don't know if all of those theories add up. It seems to me that there's holes in each of those, just like there's holes in the current explanation that we've gotten from D.C. But what I do know is this. And this goes back to Don's original issue with me. He's like, "Why do you blame the president for all this?" I didn't say I blame for the president for all this. We had multiple failures on many levels. You had security prior to the attack, but what really is the problem with the Benghazi narrative as it currently sits in kind of the official annals of history that the media has painted is that you're talking about primarily a different story than anything resembling reality, and so. when Susan Rice, 5 days after the attack, goes on all the networks, lies to the American people, says it was about the video, had nothing to do with the video. The video owner, nobody even knew about him. Nobody knew what he was. And then Hillary Clinton goes to the memorial service at Andrews Air Force Base in the hangar, saying to the family victims, we will get that guy who made that video. The president repeats that line in his statement there at the hangar. He repeats it again 2 weeks later at the United Nations when talking about the issue of terrorism and the tragedy that had befallen the nation because of 9/11, 2012. All of this, it just stinks, and it's not even very artful. Like if they were really going to try to, put together a cover for what had happened, you'd think that they would come up with something that wasn't quite as obvious. But they just kept saying the same stuff again and again. Maybe they were thinking it was kind of like Monica Lewinsky. You say it often enough, people will start to believe it. It didn't work in this case, and part of the reason is there's a cognitive dissonance in news media now. You have people like Fox News. You have people like American Family Radio. You got people that don't just buy, that toe the line of everything that Washington and New York put out. You got people that question. You've got blogs. You've got people that write, that do their own investigations. You got people that go undercover. And as that happens more and more, that helps hold accountable the people that have said what they've said in the beginning. But in this particular situation, in Benghazi, you have multiple problems. Some of the questions I want answered: where was the president? And why wasn't he at the helm of what was going on the night of the attack? He knew what it was 15 to 20 minutes into the attack, and yet he was AWOL. Nobody has an official knowledge of where he was. We haven't been given his schedule. We haven't been allowed to know where he went. We don't know if he went to bed, went out to party. We don't know what happened. We just know that he wasn't there in any of the decision-making. We know that Secretary of State Clinton promised Mr. Hicks, the number 2 guy in Libya, Mr. Stevens, number 2. We know that she promised, after being on the phone with him, I'll get right back to you with some instructions on what we're going to do and how we're going to proceed. He's still waiting for the phone call. And we know that those Navy SEALs begged and begged and begged and begged and waited for the longest amount of time for the official permission to go and do what they would want to do naturally. And that is, when they hear the guns, they start running to the problem. When they hear the firefight break out, they want to run and save the day, rescue the people that are at risk. That's what Navy SEALs do. That's how they're trained. You run towards the gunfire. They were disallowed from doing that, and to such a lengthy degree that Mr. Stevens likely died not from the terrorist actions, but from smoke inhalation in the safe room because nobody got to him in time. Just one big bungle after another. But was it entirely the president's fault? No. But knowing where he was would answer a lot of questions for us. Knowing why the Secretary of State kind of disappeared after a while would help. Knowing whether or not the Defense Department and the State Department were actually talking to each other about options of what to do. Because we have conflicting reports on whether or not troops that were in the area could have gotten there in time before the end of the firefight to save the place where the Navy SEALs ended up dying. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Frank in Texas. Hi, Frank.
How are you doing, sir? Thank you for taking the call, Kevin. The only thing that gives me peace about any of this stuff that goes on, especially in this world today, is reading 2 Timothy chapter 3. Also, the conservative media has been attempting to unmask everything that's been going on in Washington, D.C. and been totally ignored. And maybe this is enough for a wake-up call for the American people. And quite frankly, I think, the real salvation for our country is for the right to come up with somebody that's going to go and say something like, Mr. Obama, tear down this wall. And thank you for your show, sir.
All right, Frank, appreciate your enthusiasm. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's talk to Paul. I don't know where Paul's calling from, but Paul, welcome. You're on with us.
Hey, Kevin, thank you. I'm in Houston, Texas.
Good to have you.
Thank you. The absence of the president immediately after the attack and the absence of Hillary Clinton, if not it's definitely a post-conspiracy. They conspired to cover up, to protect al-Qaeda. And for that very reason, they all need to be impeached, voted out, whatever we got to do. What do you think?
You mean in the in telling Dr. Rice to say what she said on the TV stations and so forth?
And so forth, yes, and to not react, to not protect our American citizens. Isn't that what they swear to when they take an oath of office?
All I know is that every instinct that people normally would follow through on in a situation like this, the Navy SEALs were reacting to. They were wanting to go respond to. All I know is that all the normal things that would go were backwards here. Washington was not coming to their aid. People on stateside were not giving them help. And they were not even letting the people on site, the Navy SEALs that have the training and the expertise and the ability, because when they actually got to the consulate, they were actually able to rescue everyone except the airman and the ambassador. They found the airman's body. The ambassador was still in the safe room holed up. They didn't know he was in there, and they got all the other people out safely. They did what they were trained to do. Had they been allowed to do it maybe an hour and a half earlier, we might have a living ambassador today. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. So glad that you're with us. Stay with us. Kevin McCullough, glad to be with you. It's AFA Today on AFR Talk.